And Caroline will catch up when she figures out what she's doing.
Yep.
Okay? Um, so I want to welcome you to From My Heart to Yours as we connect woman to woman. Are you getting it? Okay. Uh, Before I get started, I want to make a few things clear. First of all, I in no way think that I have all the answers. I'm not doing this because I think I have all the answers. I'm doing this because if you know me, you know that I have always had a passionate heart for women, particularly to see them free. To see them free to be everything that God ever intended them to be. And there has just been so many obstacles to that. And second, I'm hoping that maybe the battles that I've endured to get to this point can somehow be used to help others, maybe shorten that journey and get to that place of freedom, total freedom in God, maybe a little quicker. Also, I'd like to reiterate that this is not a religious debate. This is a place, I'm hoping that this will be a place that we as women can express how we feel, our struggles, that we can talk about even our doubts without being judged, without feeling the pressure of performing under any kind of an umbrella, a society's umbrella, a church's umbrella, just because we have things going on in our heart, but yet we don't always express them. We have a lot more in common than most of us are willing to admit. I know and I am fully confident that over this journey, I am going to say things that are going to offend people. I'm going to say things that are going to anger people. I am probably going to say things, I know that I'm going to say things that are going to challenge people's belief systems. And that's okay. I think God created us that way. You know, He gave us a mind to think. He gave us a heart and a soul. He gave us the ability to evolve as humans. We've come a long way. I can hear you. But we've come a long way. You're watching me now, it says. Mm-hmm. Okay, good. My assistant has fixed her computer. We got it, okay? So we want to offer that. And if I say things that challenges your belief system, things that you believe I'm completely off and totally wrong, you have a right to your belief and you have a right to where you are. But I'm asking you to not make this a religious debate forum. Private message me, start your own forum and counter me. That's quite all right. But this particular forum, let's keep it free so that no one feels judged with anything that they present. What else do I need to make sure is clear before we get started here? There is no right or wrong position in what we're going to be presenting over the next few weeks. They're just questions. They're just mysteries that we want answers to. And if we think that we have a wrong question, then we may stay closed and never know the true answer. So feel free to ask anything. Be sure and use the website, or there's this messenger right here has a place where you can send me a message. Questions next week. I'm hoping to do a subject. Tonight's not actually a subject. What I want to do tonight is give you an introduction into what we're going to be doing and a little bit about why I'm doing it. But next week I'm hoping to maybe approach the difference between righteous anger and selfish anger, because some of the things that come up will make us angry, and we are going to need the tools to decide, is this an anger that is righteous, or is this an anger that is because it is offending me? And we'll go over that next week. But if you have questions or a subject you want to talk about, shoot it to me, okay? So, let me give you a little bit of background, okay? I can do that. Let me give you some background here. I would say all of my life, until recently, I have struggled with my roles. My role as a child, my role as a wife, my role as a mother, but most of all, well, my role as a Christian, but most of all, my role as a woman. And that's really strange coming from a family of 8 girls. I should have been very well equipped to know what was expected of being a woman. But I didn't, because what I would hear and what I would see would not always line up. And it definitely did not line up with what I had inside my heart. There was something inside of me that couldn't accept the world I was being exposed to. I watched and have watched so many women who are gifted and talented and passionate literally die inside because they did not have an outlet for that gift and that passion, because doors were closed for them. And it is my desire to see those doors opened. So over the years, in this struggle with my roles, I always felt like I was in this bubble, like I was in this bubble looking out into the world, and everybody was going about living their lives, and they all seemed perfectly content living their lives, but yet I didn't feel like I could quite touch them. It was like I was separated from them some way. I honestly thought there was I had serious problems. There was something really wrong with me, and I needed to be fixed. So after years of a lot of destructive choices, searching, running away from myself, trying to find comfort in this skin that God had given me, I ran into Jesus. I met him. I met Jesus, and I fell in love. And I spent the next 2 years of my life with just him. He taught me so much. It's very important that you understand that I did not learn of Jesus in a church, not in a building. It was a very intimate, very private relationship between the two of us for 2 years. And what's interesting, in that entire time, I don't recall him ever asking me to change anything about myself. All he did was love me and accept me and tell me how fearfully and wonderfully I was made, to tell me all the plans he had for me and that they were exceedingly abundantly above everything I could imagine. He built me up and built me up and built me up. But even though he never asked me to change, I did. I changed. My life is not the same, because that's what love will do to you. Love and acceptance will change you. It changes your perspective of everything around you. But coming from such a broken past and a broken life, I came to a point where I thought I needed more. So I became a part of the church body. And in my abandonment issues of my past and my huge wounding of rejection, I desperately needed the love and the acceptance of the people within the church. And so I found myself over the next years switching the source of my teaching. It came from man more than it did my personal relationship with Jesus. Not intentionally, but as I learned God's Word. Now, granted, I was 32 years old when I came to know the Lord. It is exactly 32 years later. So I've now served Him and loved Him half my life. But as I learned His Word, and as I saw it unfold in the church, they didn't reconcile in my heart. And instead of questioning it or challenging it, I turned it inward and blamed myself. I assumed that the problem was with me. So I continued to pursue God to fix me. I would cry out, "Search me, O Lord, and see if there is any error in me. Search me. Cleanse me, change me." That was my cry for a very long time. I wanted Him. I remember one time going before Him and saying, "If this is a gift of discernment, take it away from me. Because I don't like being able to see things that don't line up with what I'm learning in your Word." But He didn't. It stayed. And so I found user-friendly ways, and that's my terminology I like to use, user-friendly ways of loving God, presenting His Word, and quenching this truth that I knew inside of me. Now, granted, this was during 14 years of single parenting. And then I married my husband, Stuart George. And trust me, I'm going to have him on here one time, and I'm going to let you tell him his perspective too. So, and I set out to be this amazing Christian wife. That was my next goal. I was going to be a good Christian wife. But remember, I come from an all-girl family. So I wasn't really sure what that looked like. So I tried. And I remember once that he told me, and those of you that were in some of my class, you probably remember this story, but we were at a conference, and I remember I was just loving on God, loving on Jesus, and my husband pulled me aside, and he said to me, "Sandra, do you realize you love God more than you do me?" And I was taken back. And I said, "Yeah, I'm supposed to, aren't I?" That was the beginning of his walk, his change, because a light bulb went off in him. It was like, oh my gosh, what was that? He caught it immediately. But I began to realize that there were belief systems and teachings about the role of a wife that didn't line up with what I had learned from Jesus those 14 years I single parented. My relationship with Him shouldn't change because I got married. It should get better, not more distant. Jesus never wanted to take a back seat. He wasn't my husband and my all in all. And then when I got married, He became secondary to my husband. So Stuart and I And this would have been, gosh, quite a few years ago. We were doing Daughters of Naomi then. We went on a journey, and we began to read materials. And if you know my husband, you know he's even more studious than I am. And we studied and studied and studied, and we learned. We learned a lot. We learned that not all teachings, all of man's interpretation of the word lines up with the heart of God, lines up with his real intent. Yet there was not a venue. There was not an opening. The time wasn't right. And our spirits were sensitive enough to know that we were not going to move ahead of God. We were going to wait until he said, now. It was probably about 7 years ago. I went through a great deal of loss in my family. It seemed like one after another, people I loved were dying. And I didn't have the strength to continue on the path that I was on. And so I stepped down. I even went through a season of feeling disconnected from God. But the good news is, he never leaves us. He never forsakes us. Very lovingly and very gently, he called me back. And when he did, part of it started, I would have to say the biggest breakthrough for me was when I was at a charisma conference. And I went to this charisma conference, and there was a speaker there named Lee Grady. He was the editor of Charisma magazine at the time. I believe he has 4 daughters, and he has a real heart for women. As a matter of fact, now he has a ministry called the Mordecai Project, where he helps women in third world countries get set free from the oppression of that country. But at this conference, he was speaking about a book he had just written and that had been published. And it was The 10 Lies the Church Tells Women. And as I listened to that man, it was like every nerve ending in my soul and in my spirit was saying, yes, this is it. Somebody has taken all those things you knew in your spirit, you knew to be true, and has given you the biblical foundation and basis to embrace it. Because you see, there's this issue with certain giftings. When you have what is sort of called a prophetic gift that just hears from the Spirit and moves, and then yet the teaching gift, it needs concrete evidence. So when those two gifts clash sometimes, it's hard, because the prophetic knows in your place of knowing, but the teacher needs evidence. And Lee Grady gave me my evidence. It was like he signed my release form. And he said, you're not crazy. You're not rebellious. You're not anti-God. As a matter of fact, your spirit is very alive and very connected with the truth of what he meant for you. And when I realized that, it empowered me to move forward. Yet in moving forward, it was very sad to see how many people were concreted in a belief system that was not letting them be free. We talk about a freedom that the word offers us, and yet we as women still live captive. We talk about what's some of the things we talk about? We talk about not just being free, but we talk about let me help you. Let me look at my notes because I want to make sure I get okay. We talk about being loved the way we are, yet we're still judged if we're not the way we're supposed to be. We talk about unconditional love, yet there is a list of performance-oriented things that you have to do to experience that love. The contradictions diminishes the God I know, because the God I know is true to his word, and there is no shadow of turning in him. When he says he loves you unconditionally, he loves you unconditionally. You do not need to change for him to love you. And when he says you're free, you are free. No one can limit what he can do in you or through you. You are free. Yet as women, we so often sit back and we wait. We wait for someone else to tell us what God is willing to let us do, instead of trusting what he has put in our heart. The passions, the gifts, the talents, the energy, the wisdom. It's from God, and it's not meant to be put in a box and on a shelf and wait. It is meant to be used. It is meant to be shared, and it is meant to lead people back to the truth of who he is. I hope and pray that we as women will allow ourselves to evolve, to become what God intended in the beginning. Partners. Partners with all creation to bring forth a time that's even greater than what Adam and Eve knew in the garden. The latter rain is to be even greater. And we can't do that if we live under the old rain. We have to allow ourselves to challenge. Now, this isn't rebellion. I am not a feminist. Some of my favorite people are men. My son, my husband, my son-in-law, As a matter of fact, I think when women actually embrace who God's really called them to be, it will release men to be who they were really called to be. And later you're going to learn, as I just recently learned, that God has a purpose for men that is greater than they can even imagine. But it's centered around the freedom that we as women will learn to experience. Now, there's some other books that God sent me to over the years to raise me up, besides Lee Grady's The 10 Lies the Church Tells Women. There is Ed Salvaso's Women, God's Secret Weapon. There's a lot of prophetic word. There is a lot of amazing teachings by very godly people, men and women. about God's plan to use women in the end times. And that's not going to happen as long as we're not finding our way to the front line. We've got to find our way to the front line. And probably most recently, it's very studious, very analytical, but probably one of the best breakdowns I've ever seen, and it's by Catherine Bushnell, and it's called God's Word to Women. This woman was a doctor, a missionary. She was scholarly in Hebrew and Greek, and she published this book in the early 1900s. She was way ahead of her time, but she explores the scriptures in a way that allows you to, well, for me, it rekindled an even deeper love for God. It rekindled a respect and understanding for Paul that that basically there's been a lot of lies spoken over him and about him. He was an amazing man, really led by the Spirit. When you learn to interpret his word by the Spirit and not by man's interpretation of his word. So I don't want to continue tonight because I'm not going to go into any other subjects. Those are coming. Tonight will be short. I just really wanted to give you some background about where we're going. Please ask questions. Send them to me. There is absolutely nothing that you haven't gone through, are going through, or will go through that other women have not been through it. But we can do it in a way that honors God. We can do it in a way that releases his power. And we can do it in a way that grows us up spiritually. And that's what we want to do. So I want to say good night. Unless, of course, my partner over here says I forgot something.
When are we meeting next? Live.
Oh, live. When are we meeting next live? If this works for everyone, I will continue on Thursdays, but I'm open to suggestions if there's a better time. I will be posting this. So if you'd like for me to consider something else, send it my way. This is for you. This is for all of us. And trust me, I have not wanted to do this. I have fought doing this. I've been asked a zillion times because there are women who come to me to teach them privately. We have private groups. Some people hire me as a life coach, as a counselor, but I really, when you have a past of mine of rejection and abandonment and judgment, the last thing you want to do is put yourself out there in a world you know is going to come and blast you with everything they got. So, pray for me. And if you think I'm not hearing right or seeing right, again, I say, pray for me. And God will lead me. You know, if I ask for bread, he's not going to give me a bone. He's just not. He will guide me and lead me to all truths. That is a promise he made to me. So there is absolutely no reason for me to question the direction I'm going in. I know that I'm seeking his heart. I know that I am crying out to him. I know that I have been doing that for 32 years. And if the level of seeking and crying that I have been doing leads you down the wrong path, something's wrong with that equation. Because it's not what he promises. So have a good night, and give me some feedback, okay? See you next week. Okay? Bye.